All right, so what we're going to do with this project is build some calculators. And JavaScript, with coding, it's tuned to do math more than it is to generate words and stuff like that. It uses math to generate all those words and pictures and stuff that appears and disappears. So, funny enough, when you build calculators, it's probably one of the easier things you can do. So what I'm going to do is start with just a generic grid, something like this. I'm going to put my calculators in here, and I have 6 boxes, very simple background. You do want to add this right here. So go ahead and stop and add that. And then you want to new file and just call it calc.js. So just like your CSS files that go up here, you want this to go down here. And the reason why you put your JavaScript at the bottom is if it's a web page that loads slowly, you want to load in the style and the HTML first, and then you want it to reference this file. So you try to always file your stuff to the bottom, or at least your JavaScript to the bottom. And this is just an external JavaScript sheet. Your code could get extensive like CSS. So you put it in a different sheet so you can keep track of it and it's not gnarly on one whole page. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a form. So pick one of your grids, and I'm just going to copy and paste over the code from the MLA project. So here it is right here, and I'm going to call this addition. Well, let's do multiplication first, because addition takes a little bit of different finessing. And I have the placeholders. I'm going to get rid of these comments right here because y'all should already know how this works. And there we are. And so I have a button. It's going to be the on click, generate run function. And then I'm going to have where the number appears. So for right now, I'm going to load it in. And there you are, multiplication. It says author's last name. We can just take out the placeholder for now. So we're going to do simple multiplication. So you plug in a number here. So I'll reload. You plug in a number here. You plug in a number here. And when you hit generate, you should get the number 3. Okay. So I'm going to change the IDs in here. I'm just going to do num1 and then num2. Okay. Maybe I should do mult num1, because if you do multiple calculators, you want these names to be unique. So it's multiplication mult num1, mult num2. Now, let me show you something here. So these text boxes come in a standard size, and I did say that you don't want to do inline style, and you can do this a different way. You can do a class for this if you want, but we're just going to do an inline style and try to shrink these boxes down. And it's going to override any other styling you have. See if that works. Oh, that didn't work. Well, oh, that's why. Width, and I need a semicolon. There we go. Guess it works if you do it right. Fingers crossed. There we are, right there. Okay. Let me back up a bit. So one thing I did with my grid is I started off with all the rows set to auto, And if you remember, auto will expand and contract based upon what you put in there. Now, if you leave it on auto, when you display stuff right here, it's going to move the boxes around. So, keep this working and then go back and adjust your rows. So I've already adjusted my rows to where whenever I push this button, it's not going to move the boxes around. So I put my rows at 400, and if I want to shrink my boxes or control the left to right, you would just put pixels in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the JavaScript. First things first, we're going to have to create separate functions. So each calculator is going to be contained within its own function. So I'm going to call this function molt, and you do the pass through, and then you do the curly, and you do your curly container, and make sure it looks like hamburger buns. So I have function molt and the curlies. So now it's time to go back and name those functions. And if you remember, I called it molt num1 and molt num2. So I go const molt num1, and I'll just set it up right here, const molt num2. Oops, need the S right there. So right now these aren't going to work, but I have them listed out. So next, because I ID'd something, so I'm getting the information from these two boxes, you do get element by ID. So document in the document. So you want some parentheses there. And remember, I'm going to call this molt num1. So it's going to look for this one. Oops, it's going to look for that. So molt num1, and you want to pull out the value. Make sure you remember the semicolon. So document get element by ID, just to go back and remind. Here's the ID, molt num1, molt num2. Spelling does matter. So there we are. And I'm just going to copy and paste this over, Control C, V, and that one's going to be molt num2. Next up, since molt1 is this box, okay, and molt2 is this box, I have to multiply the two boxes. So what am I doing? I'm plugging in molt1 and molt2, and this is the operator for multiply, the asterisk. You've probably seen that before. So let me introduce you to something. Operators. There are many, you've seen these before. So the plus, the subtraction, the multiply, and divide symbol, which is a fraction basically. These are your basic operators. So to multiply, use the asterisk, shift 8. Now I want to go back to the HTML. So button on click, it's going to run this function, and I want it to spit out the answer just like in the bibliography. So that's molt ands. So it's going to appear in this section here. So remember the ID, I called it molt ands. You go back to the JavaScript, document get element by ID. And it's important to think of get element. You're not necessarily, it's almost like you're running it through. So it's looking for the ID. So get the element by ID. It's looking for that ID in your HTML, and you name it, and you want it to appear in inner HTML. And I called it this constant up here, molt total. So these are all the unique names. It's going to equal molt total. Okay, so molt answer is what's going to display, and this is the constant, the unique name I gave the constant. So molt total. Reload. Let's see if this thing works. Let's do 1 times 3. That way we know it works. So in the name of total honesty, I cut away because I stored some code down here at the bottom and I had a stray bracket and I couldn't see it, and it took me about an hour to find what was wrong with all this. So you're gonna want to watch your stray brackets and stuff like that. So reloading, go 1, 3, and that works for multiplication. Division, okay, so your operators, you have, I'm just going to put it in as a note. Oops, you got a plus, you got a minus, you got multiplication, so that's shift 8, and a / is your division symbol. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create 6 calculators, and it's really just a lot of copying and pasting. So you have, these 6 grids right here, and you just copy and paste the code into another grid, and you do division. Now, so what I want you to do is I want you to build a calculator for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That leaves you 2 more boxes. And so here's the challenge. And if you've ever taken an algebra class and you're like, hey, when am I ever going to use this? Well, here's where you're going to use it. You have to set up an algebra problem. And what you need to do is you need to accommodate calculating a rectangle, okay? So remember, with a rectangle, this side and this side are the same measurement. This side and this side are the same measurement. And also a triangle. Now, pretend that this triangle, this side, and this side are equal. And this one's going to be a little bit easier than this one, but you have to set up a algebraic equation in order to accommodate the calculation. And that's something you would do in here. So if you remember algebra, you put stuff in parentheses, and you can put an operator in there, and you put stuff in parentheses, and all you're doing is, with this, you're just multiplying or adding these 2 together. Even though they're in parentheses, it's still going to add those 2 together. However, if in here you add like times 3, what it's going to do is it's going to take what you put in for num1, multiply by number 3, and then it's going to add num2 together. So it'll take whatever you put in this box, multiply by 3, and then add in whatever you put into this box. So I'm not going to give you instructions on how to set this up, but this is why you need to know algebra. Also, algebra is really handy for coding, like if this, then this, what's missing, and stuff like that. Alrighty.